guys, we have an extra special podcast today. We have John Kimmich of the Alchemist Brewery in Stowe, Vermont, who's making awesome beer, famous Heady Topper. And I was able to get a hold of John, and he agreed to come on, which is excellent. He has a lot of knowledge, a lot of good stuff that's coming your way. So let's get to it. Here we go. Hey, we're here with John Kimmich. He is founder and co-owner of Alchemist and also brewer. How are you doing, John?
I'm doing fantastic, Michael. How are you?
That's awesome. No, I appreciate you being on the podcast today. It's really it's really great that you made the time out. I appreciate it. So I wanted to get talk to you and try to educate people on your background. Where did you start? I know that you had I think you were in Pittsburgh, and then you got into Vermont. You met Greg Noonan, and there was a lot of in between. So maybe you can you let us know how you started?
Well, there you go. You just told everybody right there. Well, I started homebrewing when I was in college, and was inspired to do so by one of my brother-in-laws. I found his old copy of Charlie Papazian's homebrewing book and started flipping through it and was just fascinated by it. And we brewed a batch of beer a couple weeks later, and that was the beginning of it. I was just instantly hooked with the whole thing. Eventually I made my way up to Vermont in search of my first, paid brewing gig, and that's when I introduced myself to Greg. He was the guy that I was hunting for, and I introduced myself and begged him for a job. So, that started a relationship that I cherish to this day. I became a great friend and mentor, and taught me a lot about the business and actually making beer. So, it was a crazy beginning. It was certainly a leap of faith at that point to go for it and to say, I'm going to make a career out of brewing beer. In the early 90s, it was a very different scene. But that led me to Vermont, which is where Jen and I met and fell in love and decided that this was where we were going to open our own business someday when we were able. And that was the Alchemist Pub and Brewery, which we just celebrated 15 years of a couple weeks ago. So wow. November 29th was our 15th anniversary of when we opened the pub.
Wow, that's excellent. And you said, I think I read that Greg hired you as a waiter in New Hampshire. Where in New Hampshire?
The 7 Barrel. It doesn't exist
anymore. The 7 Barrel in Lebanon.
West Lebanon, yep.
Yeah.
And so they had just opened like 9 months earlier when I started there. And I was a waiter, and I'd go in on my days off, and I'd work for free in the brewery.
Wow.
And I did that for about a year before he noticed, and he offered me the head brewer job at the Vermont Pub and Brewery in Burlington.
Wow. Yeah, and your journey has not been easy. I guess you started with him and then opened you had kind of a brew pub. I guess you had a restaurant and a brewery before your current location.
Well, sure. The Alchemist Pub, that was a 60-seat, 7-barrel brew pub that we operated for 8 years until Tropical Storm Irene flooded the town of Waterbury and destroyed the brew pub. And thankfully, though, we were already in the position of starting to package Heady Topper. The plan was we were going to operate both those businesses at the same time, and the packaging brewery would just finally, for the first time, give us the ability to package our beer in any form. So for 8 years, we didn't even offer growlers. If you had our beer, you had it draft at our pub. Right. So we were finally just going to kind of complement that and have some Heady Topper in cans, and thank goodness Jen had the foresight to push us in that direction, because that's what saved us. Because had we not done that, we would have pretty much been ruined that day when the flood hit.
Man, I know that's terrible. But getting back to the Heady Topper, I mean, it's consistently at the top of all these lists. 100 best beers in the world, Beer Advocate, Men's Journal. It's a delicious double IPA with an 8% ABV, but it's very sought after. And where did the name Heady Topper come from?
Oh, it's just a moment of inspiration of Jen and I one afternoon that just kind of came to be, and the name just really stuck with us. There's something about it that it just clicked, and just really took on a life of its own. I started brewing that beer, maybe 3-4 months after we first opened that pub, so early 2004, and it was a hit right away. People had a real taste for it, and it began to garner its reputation, and it just kind of always took its own life of its own. It's a crazy phenomenon for sure. But with that said, no phenomenon would last if it didn't back up its reputation. So,
right.
Jen and I take that very seriously, and everybody says quality is key, but maybe it just is more so for us because I really take great care in ensuring that we keep our end of the bargain, which is to make an absolutely outstanding double IPA.
Right.
So even now, when people try it for the first time in a world of IPAs, they still are impressed, which just tells us that we do our job well, But
yeah.
We work our tails off to do it well.
Right. So you make a delicious product, but you also self-distribute, right?
We do self-distribute. Yes, that is one of the many nice things of operating in Vermont. But the ability to self-distribute is essential to us because, when we started doing that in 2011, we kind of rewrote a lot of the rules, and we took it upon ourselves to educate retailers and customers and other distributors, really, through our actions, the importance of handling beer properly, of keeping it cold at all times. That doesn't mean just when it's being delivered, and it doesn't mean just up until it's been sold. It means from the time we put it in the package until the time you put it in your fridge. So it was a real uphill climb for us, just trying to educate people as to that need. I mean, how many retail places would say, well, we don't refrigerate this beer or this beer, and we'd say, well, this is not that beer. This beer must be cold at all times, and so it was a huge learning curve for a lot of retail accounts. And it took some tough love at times to get them to see the light. But now, you'd be hard-pressed to find a beer store or a distributor that doesn't tout the fact that they keep your beer cold from beginning to end. And, so it's nothing was ever already there, I should say, when we started. I feel like we've always kind of had to buck the trend to move things forward.
Oh, exactly.
Hazy beer. I mean, geez. When I first started brewing Heady Topper, people would actually complain that it had a haze to it. And, it took all these years of educating people that it's what the beer tastes and smells like. If it has a haze as a result of the way I brew it, so be it. But now, of course, everybody takes it in the opposite extreme and kind of treats it as though the haze is the be-all, end-all, when,
right.
In reality, the haziness of a beer for us is just a byproduct of the techniques that I use.
Right.
A lot of breweries will now brew it to be hazy, while haze was just kind of a result.
Right.
And so now, there it is. 10 years later, even 15, the world of hazy beer is now this fully accepted and at times expected kind of aspect.
Yeah, what was disappointing at the GABF? They had the New England style IPA category, and not one brewer from New England won that. They were all outside of New England, so that was kind of disappointing. I'm like, what are you kidding me, or what?
A lot of us don't even enter those competitions anymore.
I know. I don't think there's any.
But regardless of that, I mean, so I could care less about something like that, to tell you the truth, because there's a lot of beer out there, and especially what is now being called New England IPA. I mean, a lot of them just aren't to my taste.
Right.
I think that has turned into a what people now define as New England IPA is not how we define our beer. That soft, chalky finish. I just would never brew a beer that tasted like that, because that is not to my personal taste. And it's now kind of, I don't even really agree that we are, even though we're attributed with being, one of the originals, now as it's defined, I don't consider our beer to be a New England IPA.
Mm-hmm.
I think when people think New England IPA now, they're thinking a soft, chalky, juicy kind of thing instead of a crisply bitter, well-defined kind of thing.
Right.
I mean, for years, when we did enter those competitions, we would get thrown right out of the IPA category because it was hazy. And now, people say it's not hazy enough, which is, of course, preposterous.
It's Heady Topper, I mean, it's...
we've always just kind of been in that in-between zone where it doesn't really fit here and it doesn't really fit there, and we're just fine with that. I mean, if anybody asks me, it's double IPA. It's, it doesn't really need to be defined more than that.
No, it's hoppy. You have a high ABV, double IPA. There you go. But
and when you finish one, you just can't wait to have the next.
That's right. It's delicious. Yeah, delicious. You're probably going to hang up on me, but I did pour it into a glass one day, and I was drinking out of a glass. So I'm sorry.
No,
I know in the can.
I tell people all the time, once you buy it, you can drink it out of your shoe if you want to.
It's very good, though. It's very good. But it's interesting that you got into the cans. Like when everybody else was in bottles, all of a sudden the can craze. Like we have the brewery here, and I started this brewery because we had 22-ounce bottles. I'm like, all right, I can make a business out of this. And then everybody went into cans, and then no one wanted 22-ounce bottles anymore. I'm like, all right, that's great. So we had, and nobody wanted to come and can for us because we were small. So we had to figure it out, and I built my own canning, out of Blickman guns. Like I mounted them to a board, but even that, I mean, I can't make any money on that. So I'm just trying to go back to these 22-ounce. But you kind of saw it coming, I guess, in terms of cans, because you got into the can. And your cans are very uniquely shaped. They're not really normal cans, right?
No, they are. They're just like everybody else's cans.
They're kind of slim.
They're 16-ounce ball cans. But, when we decided to put it in cans, it was just the logical thing, and it had just really become feasible for a small brewer to have a canning line with companies like Cask. So once it was feasible to have a canning line, I can remember getting a Sierra Nevada Torpedo in 16-ounce cans, and then I remember somebody at the pub bringing me a can of Surly, and that's when we were just like, oh gosh, we are definitely making the right decision. We're doing these cans. We're going to put Heady Topper in cans, for all the obvious reasons. The no broken glass out in the rivers, to the infinite recyclability of the cans, to the protection from the sunlight, which would be so essential for a beer like Heady Topper.
Right.
So, there definitely weren't a lot of breweries with double IPAs in 16-ounce 4-packs, that's for sure.
No.
And it is quite common nowadays to see a long, long cooler full of nothing but those.
Yeah.
So, we just kind of did what we felt was going to be best for the beer. And it is. So it's not surprising that it kind of exploded because it really did change the industry when those small machines came onto the scene.
Right. So you had a 7-barrel at the brew pub, and now, yep. What is the size of your system now?
Well, in Waterbury, where we make Heady Topper, that's a 15-barrel brew house. Well, it's actually a 20 hectoliter brew house, but we do 9,000 barrels a year there. And then we built this new facility in Stowe, and we put in a 30-barrel brew house, but we still produce 9,000 barrels of beer a year. So for total, we now do 18,000 barrels, roughly. And, seeing as the most we ever did in a year at the pub was about 400, it's a huge leap for us. A lot of breweries would just capitalize on their success and just grow and grow and grow, but that's just not our bag. That's just not something we've ever really had an interest in doing. I mean, we're bigger now than we ever dreamt of being, and I certainly have no plans on being any bigger than we are right now. So we've hit our niche. This is we now have 52 employees that we are highly focused on our social footprint, and last year we got our foundation started, so now we have the Alchemist Foundation, which we really focus on education here in the state of Vermont. And we are very socially active people and environmentally active. So, for us, we're super proud of everything we've achieved in the world of beer, but we have so much more that we are focused on. We look at this company as really being our mechanism toward us being able to make some real change in our local community and in the entire state, really.
Wow, that's awesome.
So,
yeah,
I mean, it's been a crazy growth over the years, and, some people look at us and say we're crazy for not just doubling down and tripling down and quadrupling down and just going, but, to what end? Then you lose control and the beer starts to suck. And, and it's happened countless times to countless breweries all over the world, and it just will not happen at the Alchemist.
Well, that's very noble. I mean, I think that's a great, mindset, because, like you said, there's really great beer that was once brewed by a brewery, then they get taken over, and then the thing changes, and it's not the same. It
always does.
It always does. It does. Yeah. And
that's why I have, I have a staff of brewery employees, but nothing happens without my oversight, and I just would have it no other way. I trust my employees implicitly, and they do exactly what I ask them to do, but, there's always something in the back of my brain that tells me, don't take your eye off the prize, so
right.
It's pretty much impossible for me to walk away from what we do for very long, for more than a day or two.
Wow.
So I'm fine with that. Jen and I both love to work, and we love what we do. It's just, most often it doesn't even seem like work. But of course it is. It's constant and never ending. But we're fortunate to be passionate about what we do, and we have a lot of cool things on the docket, and it's an exciting time. The 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. I mean, we have so many things planned for this brewery that don't involve more beer, you know.
So is it more like giving back to the community, or what kind of things?
Well,
or can you let that information go? Or
we have our hands in so many different things. You know, we're in the process of organizing a class at Community College of Vermont to help train disadvantaged kids in basic things, you know, basic soft skills on how to be a good employee and what an employer is looking for, and job training, and trying to encourage these kids to do something with themselves. You know, I mean, here in the state of Vermont, 50% of high school graduates do not go on to college. And what are you going to do? You know, what are you prepared to do? You need to be prepared. And there are so many advantages. And so, you know, we're very passionate about it, and connecting with these kids that may otherwise slip through the cracks, that aren't going to go to college. And what are they going to do? They need somebody to teach them what to do, and they need somebody to inspire them to make themselves better and to take advantage of something they might be passionate about. You know, I think there's a lot of kids that do not get told of the great benefit of working in the trades. You know, and as a brewer, you see that firsthand. As soon as you start paying the bills for a welder to come to your brewery, you realize just how much potential is there, you know. So I think a lot of times these kids just aren't even exposed to this kind of thinking, and so we're really trying to work with local school districts and get these kids inspired and keep them here in Vermont, you know, so we don't have population flight. We actually keep this state vibrant, keep all the things that people love about Vermont, and keep them happening. So it's you know, I mean, that's not even to touch on our environmental initiatives with our goal of someday being as close to zero waste here at the brewery as possible. And I mean, I could talk to you for 3 hours about stuff like that, but you know, we built our own wastewater treatment facility right here in the brewery. So we just got an award from the state of Vermont a couple months ago that you know, for the contribution that we do to the town of Stowe. We actually dilute the waste stream into the town's wastewater treatment facility because we pre-treat all of our waste. So there's so many things I could talk about, but I'm sure you've got a list of questions there for me.
No, it's good stuff. It's good stuff. But yeah, I mean, like you're saying about a trade, I mean, you know, a lot of people go to college these days and they get this diploma, but what does it mean, you know? And then they get a $200,000 you know, nut that they got to pay back. So sure. I think going into the trades is very good, you know, for like you said, you know, you need a plumber.
Well, for a lot of people, college just isn't right.
Yeah.
You know, and they might have people at their schools telling them that's the only way to get ahead. And I think there's a lot of people in the world that could tell you that is not always true. Quite often it is, but not always. No.
So like you said you were still involved. Are you involved with the actual brewing? I mean, you're there when, like you said, you were. I guess you said you're on your way back to the Stowe facility.
Oh my gosh, I'm back and forth between the two breweries every day. Yes, I design every beer that goes out these doors. I select all the ingredients every year. I mean, sure. Gosh.
Wow.
It's got to be somebody calling the shots.
Right. And that, your yeast strain, is that proprietary, or do you, you know?
Well, not anymore. Well, I mean, it is. It is. But you know, there's any number of yeast labs out there that have cultured yeast out of our cans and now sell it as such.
Right.
But no, they don't have our exact key strain. They have what's left behind in the bottom of the can.
Because it's not just the hops in beer. You know, I'm trying to educate people. I mean, yeast plays a big role, you know, in flavors.
Yeah. Well, yeast is very expressive for sure, but geez, would our beer taste amazing with a different yeast? Absolutely. You know, would it taste different? Sure, it would taste different, but I don't think people would be blown away by the difference.
Mm.
But we certainly have an expressive yeast that lends beautiful character to our beers, that's for sure.
Right. Yeah. And your hops, where are they sourced from? Is this all over? Or?
The Pacific Northwest. You know, it really depends on what hops I select. You know, I go through and I do an actual physical examination of many different lots of hops. And so some might be from Idaho, some might be from Oregon, some might be from Washington, and I'm not constrained by the region. I choose what I want my beers to taste like for the next year when I select my hops. This year, I don't think I got anything from Idaho. I think I was pretty heavy on Washington this year. I might have had one of my hops come out of Oregon, but for whatever reason, you know, the climate, the crop, everything, every year is different. And the hops that I selected were primarily Washington hops. So that's for 2019.
So it's kind of like wine, right? If you can kind of, like your hops that you get, I mean, sometimes like a region in France might have an awesome year, and then the next year it might be bad, or it just depends on the weather and climate.
Well, I mean, that's another thing that, you know, people love to voice their opinions, and, you know, of course that's great. It's good feedback. But sometimes I'll hear people say, oh, well, Heady Topper doesn't taste like it did 3 years ago. It's like, well, of course it doesn't. First of all, I don't brew that way. I don't select hops so that I can make a beer taste exactly the way it did last year. I get the very best of the hops that are in my recipe every year. So you are going to get that year's version of Heady Topper. You know, so it's a different barley crop. I buy my barley from a small barley producer in England. So,
okay,
of course, the crop is different every year. The weather is different every year. Whether it's a winter crop or a summer crop is going to be very different. So I get to be very specific and select my barley from when I want it, and I get to select my hops and what I want them to taste like. And so, to me, that's what craft beer is all about. Mm-hmm. I'm not going out there to select the most consistent cascade so that I can make my whatever taste exactly like it did for the last 10 years. I want you to try that year, you know. I want you to experience what I deemed to be the best hops I could get my hands on. And I can generally get my hands on extremely good hops at this point. I have earned my pecking order, so I can really get some choice stuff. And boy, the stuff I selected this fall for 2019, whew, it's going to be awesome.
Good stuff. We're looking forward to it. Yeah.
I mean, Heady is going to just be dynamite in 2019. You know,
awesome.
We start using those new hops right around January 1st-ish. You know, different varieties come in at different times, but usually by spring, we're consistently into that year's hops. So it's a cool thing. There's kind of a little click where it changes over for the year, and you start drinking that year's character.
Right.
So,
and you don't really have a lot of inventory. I guess it moves quickly, right? Especially just to keep it fresh.
Beer?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness, no. It goes out the week it's packaged. It goes out.
Yeah.
Goes out again the next week. No.
Wow.
And that, you know, that too, that's part of why we stay the size we are. I mean, we make 9,000 barrels a year of Heady Topper. That's a shit ton of beer. And and we can assure that it's perfect and dynamite every time you buy it from one of our accounts. So we would just never jeopardize that and trying to just do more and more and more.
No. No. Well, that's great. You got control over it. You only distribute local. I think, what is it, a 25-mile radius around your?
Yep, that's our region where we self-distribute. When we hit the stick season and mud season, and if we have the ability to, we like to send little shipments here and there, which is kind of cool because we can hit New York City for a certain holiday and stuff like that. So we finally matured to the point where we can do all of those things. Like, that was always part of our plan from the start, was that we have big tourist seasons here, so there are high seasons and low seasons, and for a while the low seasons weren't even low seasons, so it was hectic, and everything, a lot of times the beer is just going too fast. There is such a thing as it going too fast. So, now we hit those beautiful times where there's, we just sent some to Manhattan, which we know our fans in New York City are just thrilled that for like a week, it's like, boop, boop, hey, oh my God, you're out at your bar there, you can get a can of Focal Banger, and you go back in the next week and it's gone. And it's like,
yeah.
But that's kind of fun. Every once in a while we'll do it, we bounce around. If we send some to Philly, sometimes we'll send them a couple of pallets of beer, and it's great because then you meet some really cool people.
That's
and,
awesome.
I've gone down to Monk's in Philly and done events down there, and it's just it's a really cool experience.
Now, how do you get it out of Vermont? You have to get it through a distributor, right? Or no? Or do you do it directly?
Oh, sure. We work with specific people in specific areas that understand what we require.
Right. Right, but they're probably thrilled,
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
It'd be amazing if I walked into there, because I'm from New York originally, that'd be awesome if I went into a bar down there and it had Heady Topper on tap. I'm like, what?
Well, they wouldn't have it on tap, that's for sure.
Oh, they won't have it?
No, it would be just the cans.
Oh, just in cans. Okay, okay.
But still, to be able to go in and you get it right there, and that left our brewery like 3 days earlier, so it's cool because it is so special and so not often that we do it that it just works well, because it goes down super fresh. It is gobbled up and just gone in an instant. So we know that for us, being such control freaks, it's just the perfect kind of thing. Man.
So now you don't keg at all, right? To get it out there, you just do it in cans.
Nope. We have one draft account in the world. Yeah.
Is that up by you, or is it just your?
And our friend Eric's restaurant. It's called Hen of the Wood in Waterbury, and they keep Heady Topper on draft there.
That's awesome.
It's pretty much just selfish, so that when we go and eat there, we can sit down and have a draft Heady Topper. But
why not? I do the same thing.
Aside from our tasting room, that's the only place where you can get a draft.
And now your new tasting room, you don't have any food there, right? You got out of the food industry.
Oh, yeah. No food, just free samples. We sell like little half pours, but no, we have no desire to be in the food business. There's a lot of great restaurants in town.
Right. Yeah, the restaurants are a nightmare. I mean, I don't know anything about restaurants, and people think they do, and then they start, oh, yeah, I'll do a brewery, we'll do a brew pub, and I'm like, I don't know. Get into restaurants and food, it's just a mess.
Yep. Next thing you know, they got brewing equipment for sale. So
that's what it is, right? Yeah, I've seen it happen. Yeah, I've seen it happen. It's happened locally too. It's terrible. They're really great guys. Sure. That's have great intentions, and then it just blows up.
Oh, you're going to see a lot more of that in the coming years, I believe. Absolutely.
I mean, even down by me. I mean, lately, a lot of breweries, a couple breweries, like you wouldn't think go out of business, or they've went out of business, and it's like, wow.
Get ready. I think you're going to see a lot of that. I do not think it's sustainable.
So what do you
I
think
now
about
more than ever? People are aware of what is quality and what is not, and the wheat shall be separated from the chaff.
Oh yeah,
that is for sure. I mean, that's just inevitable.
No. Oh yeah. As we move along, because there's a lot of breweries that are popular, and then I drink their beer, and I'm like, I don't know why is this so popular? I don't get it. And you're right. It's going to happen. Do you think there's a bubble now, craft beer bubble?
Absolutely.
You think so?
Oh sure. I mean, it's just not sustainable. When you walk into where was I this fall? I was in, and I've seen it. I've seen it in New York. I was in San Francisco, and we went into a package store, and it is a cooler that is, I mean, full of 4-packs of every color in the rainbow, every esoteric, crazy label you can imagine.
Right.
Half of them you can't even tell what style of beer it is because you can't even find it anywhere on the can.
Right.
And there they all sit. And it's like, okay, well, I'll take 1 can of this over here. It's like, so how is this place going through all this beer? They're not. There's just no way.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of time until the ones that sit on the shelves, and then they start sending back to the brewery, and then just like that, I mean, it could happen to a brewery quickly.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just not sustainable. You can only push it out into a new market so much because they're a very savvy market no matter where you're going. So you really need to have your chops, and if you don't, you're doomed, and I don't have to tell anybody in the brewing industry that the craft beer world right now has never seen more mediocre beer ever.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of good beer, but there's a lot more mediocre beer than
right.
good beer. A lot more.
Right.
I mean, that's just not sustainable.
No. And a lot of people get into it and they're like, yeah, we're going to make awesome beer and we'll just throw a bunch of hops in and it'll be awesome. I'm like, well, what distinguishes you from other beer that's really good? I mean,
sure.
All
you got to do is taste it.
Yeah.
I mean, how many cans of beer get dumped down the drain,
Yeah. And, the cool label thing only goes so far.
Oh,
like
sure
you're
does.
saying, So, yeah. Oh, what's interesting? Your logo. Can you and also the name, the Alchemist, is very interesting, and the logo. Can you educate us on where that's from?
The symbol, you mean?
Yeah, the symbol. Yeah.
That is the alchemic symbol for fermentation. So years ago, when I was working for Greg, we were sitting at the bar at the Vermont Pub and Brewery having some after shift beers. And on their old coaster, on their old VPB logo, real small, was that symbol.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember asking him what it meant. And he explained to me what it meant, and that just stuck in my brain. And a few years later, Jen and I asked him if we could co-opt that symbol and use that as the central symbol to our business. We wanted to call it the Alchemist, and of course, he very graciously agreed, and so that became the main symbol of the Alchemist, and that's pretty much where the name came from too. It all started with that symbol.
Interesting.
And of course, all the obvious connotations of turning matter into gold.
It is gold, isn't it?
That was very much a part of the idea as well. I knew I went to business school, but I knew I was never going to be like a suit and tie office kind of guy. I needed to make something. I needed to create something that I could have at the end of the day. I just could not have a job where it was just numbers on a page. I needed to have something tangible at the end of the day. So, it all worked very well into mine and Jen's idea of what we wanted to create as a business, and
right.
And the name just stuck. We knew we didn't want to be the Waterbury Brewing Company. We wanted to have a name, something unique, a place, the Alchemist. not the Alchemist Pub. You know, people, that was our name. The official name was the Alchemist Pub and Brewery, but that was more of just the pub and brewery part was just the tag to tell people what we were. You know, the Alchemist is what we were known as and continue to be known as.
Right. No, I understand about you want to make something, because I'm a CPA as well. I'm an auditor. And whenever I go in and I say, hey, I'm an auditor, I'm here, they're like, oh, when are you leaving? I'm like, I just got here.
Yeah.
And then what you do is you just, put an Excel spreadsheet together and make the outside auditors happy, and then you just go away. And like, what have you really done? You really haven't done. So, I mean, the brewing part is my passion. I create something that I want to share, and, people like it, which is good. But I'd rather do this, and that's kind of where I'm trying to gravitate towards that instead of just sitting in a cube and wasting your life away. It doesn't make sense.
Oh, sure.
So, that's awesome. I mean, you guys have really gone through a journey. You're making excellent beer, and you're in it. I mean, you monitor everything, you oversee everything, you make sure the quality is there. You're not.
Oh my goodness! I couldn't imagine any other way. And as far as we're concerned, we've only just got started, so it's gonna be exciting as hell to see what the next 15, 20 years bring.
Man, I gotta get up there too. I've been to Stowe. I haven't been to your place, but I gotta go up there and just you're not too far. I don't know how far you're. 2 hours or something. Yeah, I should just get in a car and go. I will.
You're missing out.
I know I am. I know. People give me cans. I'm like, wow, dude, you got to. I said, yeah. So I'm like, I gotta go. But
well, we'll be ready for you when you make it up here, Mike.
Oh, that is, it means the world to me that you're on the podcast today. So listen, like parting comment, like how do you, like this is kind of this whole podcast is geared towards people who drink the mass produced beer, the watered down beer. They really don't know what beer is. Like, what kind of words of wisdom can you give to these people that they can gravitate towards local beer? Try some real beer.
I'm probably not going to give you the answer you're looking for, because as far as I'm concerned, if they're drinking beer at all, I couldn't be happier.
Mm-hmm.
I like all kinds of beer. If somebody's into cheap light beer, I would rarely fault them for it. I would try to introduce them to craft beer. There's a world out there to be discovered, but boy, I just love beer of all kinds. So if you're a beer drinker in general, thank you. Beer is good,
and there's a time and place for all types of beer, and that's what we're. But a lot of people don't know about this other type of beer, especially when I came up here, to New England and had the idea of making a beer out of this Irish barley, which is what we do. And then I'm like, I can do this here. I can do this. And, we're 4 years in. It's been a roller coaster, but I'm still alive. Others are gone, but I'm still here. But, well, onward, right? Onward,
exactly.
All right. Hey, John, this has been awesome. I appreciate you being on. I appreciate the beer you're making. It's excellent. And thank you. Thank you for what you do. And I got to make...
It's my pleasure, Michael, and thanks for having me on.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Take care.
Bye-bye. You too.
Bye. Yeah, that was John Kimmich of The Alchemist. They're making excellent beer, doing a lot of good stuff with hops, and he absolutely knows what he's doing. His beer is renowned the world over, and he agreed to come on. It was awesome, and we got a lot of good knowledge out of him. And I got to go up and visit the tap room. I haven't been there. He has a brewery and a visitor center where you can get delicious Heady Topper. You also have Focal Banger there and a lot of other offerings, which are excellent. And, if you're in the Stowe area, Waterbury, go visit them. It's excellent stuff. So that is our podcast. We bring these to you every Monday. If you want to listen to a brewer or a founder of a company, we interview them and see what their history was and where they're going. And on Wednesdays, we do beer styles, which we, pick another style from the list of GABF beers in order to get into the Great American Beer Festival competition. Just go down the list and just explain what it is. If it's a dark ale, a stout, a hoppy ale, there's different characteristics for each category, and you got to dial it in order to compete. And, even the glass you serve it in, the grains you use, the hoppiness, the bitterness, all kinds of different factors. So there's not just one style of beer, guys, lagers or IPAs. There's a lot more styles, like 102 styles, and then they have subcategories, so you can go crazy. And then on Fridays, we have craft beer news, which we bring you the news of the week for you. And if you like what we're doing, we like our podcast, we want to bring you more like John Kimmich. We're working on it. Got to get out to that Craft Brewers Conference and go live and just grab as many people as I can, get them on the podcast. Looking forward to that in April in Denver. And if you like what we're doing, please go online. Please go on iTunes, subscribe. Give us a rating, give us a review. That's the only way we get up in the rankings with the iTunes algorithms. And, I appreciate it if you can do that for me. We'll keep bringing you the great content that we do. Okay, guys. Love you guys. And we'll talk to you soon.